Hello.
Take myself off mute for now. Hello.
Hi, it's Ramesh.
Hey, Ramesh.
Hello, Ramesh.
Hi there.
Hey, Don, do you know how long the board meetings have been lasting lately?
You know, they've been actually been running their normal length.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, you're getting some. I'm streaming live. I'm streaming live, so it's coming back on me.
I think you just need to mute one of your microphones,
Yeah,
either the
I'll
computer.
mute mine.
Yeah, either the computer or the telephone set. I don't believe you've met. I'm Ramesh. I'm the owner's rep for the construction program.
I'm Pam Shaw. I'm the Director of Special Education. So,
Hi, Pam.
hi.
It's amazing what technology has achieved. I mean, 3 or 4 years back, this would have been a hard thing to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking too, I mean, a few years ago, even, like 10 for kids to connect with one another and have
Right.
something so they weren't going stir crazy at home.
Right.
At least they're still able to connect with friends
Right.
a little bit more in person than just a voice.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Ryan.
Hey. So Ryan, you're muted.
Hello.
There you go.
There we go.
Don, how many others are you expecting?
He's on mute.
The reason why I'm muting myself is we're streaming live on YouTube, but I haven't posted yet. So I'm hearing it in delay. I heard it twice.
Oh,
I hear it here, and then I hear it on playback.
of course.
Got it. Sorry
But-
about that.
Still waiting for the whole board.
Got it.
I'm actually sitting by the lake, you know. It's a great day to sit outside.
Nice view.
That's right. And people complained last time I was at the beach, you know, so I said, okay, this time I'll go to the lakefront.
Ramesh, you should just put a plane that goes through the sky behind you.
I was reading an article in the New York Times over the weekend in which they said that the Zoom meetings that a lot of businesses are in all day long is causing a huge stress. It's actually a lot more difficult to sit in a Zoom meeting and concentrate because you actually have to give your full attention. If you talk or you're responding to a question, you can't be distracted. And that really takes a toll on your concentration.
It does wear you out over time, I will tell you that.
Oh, yeah.
I often wind up with a headache by the end of the day.
Yeah.
I'm just staring at it.
And the screens are bright, you know, and then you're trying to get
Mhm.
some white light on yourself.
Yeah.
And it does seem like the meeting schedule has gotten a lot fuller than it used to be.
I think that's true because, usually when I have a meeting, it's like you walk away from the computer, you drive to another location, and because you can do them one right after the other, you're
Right.
just bombarded with them. So,
I know we've run into that internally. I mean, the 5 or 10 minute conversations don't happen walking by someone's desk. So you end
yeah,
up being a 2-hour Zoom meeting. So
right.
Then you have the one which has 30 people in it. Oh, good grief. Nothing gets done.
like my kids' Zoom meetings for class, it's a free for all.
Hey, Angela, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing tonight?
Okay.
No.
We have a family virtual cocktail meeting on Sundays. It's a total disaster. Between the kids and the adults, everyone trying to wave at each other. Just
It's good to stay connected though, right?
yeah, just to hear their voices, you know. So
Ramesh, are you aware of anybody from the community ever attending these meetings or at least be participating?
Online?
Yeah,
I don't think, last time we didn't have anyone.
No, we didn't.
Yeah, but the meetings are recorded, so the link is available. So there's possible that there are some eyeballs of views that take place later. It's possible. I don't know. I mean, it's not really the most convenient time. It's dinner time for a lot of folks. So,
right.
but I think the next day maybe some parents may watch it.
Talking about watching our board meetings.
Yeah. Hey, Martha.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
So are we streaming, Don?
Hello, everybody.
Jim?
Hey, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Jason?
I'll wait till everybody's in until we post the live link.
Hey, everyone.
Hey, Jason.
How's it going?
Jeff and Sherry there. An empty chair, that's Angela.
I think when we go back to closed session, I can't set the meeting up while I'm in a meeting, so
Ah,
it'll probably take me a minute to, once we close out of this one, or maybe I'll leave a couple minutes early and I'll send you the link right then.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Brady Bunch.
Hey. Who is phone number ending in 6850?
I'm gonna
Does
guess
anyone
it
know?
might be Joel, but I'm not sure.
See if I got it.
See, Linda's not on video yet.
6850 is Joel.
Okay.
All right. We'll wait another minute here.
There's Linda.
Ramesh, are you on a boat in the middle of Lake Michigan?
Yeah, I decided to move over from the beach. Last time, I think people complained I was having too good a time. So,
All right. Well, we're at 7. Should we wait another minute for Joel?
Yeah, is David joining?
Yeah.
Are we missing David? Okay.
We should have all 7.
Dan,
I've
you're
got
sitting in
Dan,
Kelly's
Linda,
meeting
Jeff.
spot.
Sherry.
I'm sitting where?
You're sitting in Kelly's meeting spot. I've seen that corner of your home before.
This is world famous. When I talked to Bob the other day, he was saying, "What's that behind you? Is that some kind of Star Wars thing?" No, they're curtains.
Well, I will share that Don Tofano was sitting in the Seinfeld set today. I'm like, that looks so familiar to me.
Mm.
And I couldn't place it.
Like I've been there.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Let's see. So we're still missing Joel let's see. So was it just Joel? I guess we're missing at this point.
Well, I don't see David either.
Oh, David. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Wes just joined.
Wes just joined. Okay, good.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm using a different device. So I was trying to type in the password and there's 2 different passwords, one for phone and one for the webinar. I wonder if they're trying to use the phone one like I was, or maybe I'm just the only dummy that didn't notice the difference. I don't know.
Dan, I'll let you know when it's posted and we're recording.
Okay.
Okay. Once everybody gets in, I'll get it posted and I'll start the recording.
All right. Is there any issue with us delaying at this point? And we're at 7:02.
I've told, I have it posted on the website that
Mhm.
it could be a few minutes after 7 and to just keep refreshing.
So
Okay.
David
The
says
link.
the password's not letting him in, Don. Are you able to relink him?
You might be using the wrong one.
Yeah, I can,
Because I kept trying to use that 478550, and then I realized up above there was a different password.
Yeah.
I have to get into Zoom. Hold on a second. I'm going to go back to my mail.
And mine was right in my calendar link. So
Yeah.
he said he's tried both.
Oh. Oh.
All right.
I mean, there's
Um,
only one. I can't without.
Yeah, let me see if I have it.
Did you just try clicking the link on in the email? Did you try that? The email that Don sent.
Yeah, that's
Just click that link. Is all I got in.
Yeah,
Right.
you shouldn't have to enter a password if you use
that's
the
what I
link.
did.
I wonder if it's somehow his personal account, maybe he's signed in to Zoom under a different account or a different email address. When I came in, it asked me for my name and email address, and I typed in this one,
Oh, really?
D96.org.
Yeah, me too.
And I know Don, because you set it up. Can
Yeah,
I copy this?
Yeah, you should just be able to resend it. Is it Dave that messaging you?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I see Joel dialing in, looks like. Joel, you there?
Okay, I'm emailing David the link that was in my calendar. Don, I copied you. Can you make sure, because there were two links that show up in the calendar invitation.
One of the links is just for international phone numbers. The other one is the link to the Zoom. His phone number is here, so I can't promote him to panelist. I am allowed to talk.
So David's there.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
Dialed in.
Okay.
I
Okay,
can't seem to get can you guys hear me?
we can
Yep.
hear you.
Okay.
All right.
1 second.
I can't seem to get it to get logged in through the Zoom on the computer.
Okay.
Is it
John, did you share the link? Like if you click on the little eye up in the top left-hand corner by live, that link and that password?
is it the alphanumeric password?
Well, with the link, you shouldn't need the password.
But, or at least that link there?
It's
Oh,
just
so
it's a regular,
prompting you for a
I just sent a
password,
Zoom, invite, just like, the same thing everyone else got.
All right, Joel, we
Mine's-
see
I'm
you
being
now.
prompted.
Can you hear me?
We can hear
Yeah.
you. Small
Yeah.
victories. There we go.
Okay,
Awesome.
are we gonna get it started?
Yeah, I suppose we've got, I don't know, are we gonna still try to, David, are you still gonna try to connect video in the background?
Yeah, I'm still gonna try to. I'll still try
Okay.
to, but I'll stay on the phone.
Yeah, you're, okay, I'm gonna publish it and then I'll start the video.
Okay,
Okay, 1 second. And we're gonna start recording now.
All right, I see live on YouTube. All right, we have returned to open session. So at this time, is there any public comment? All right, if no public comment, are there any changes to the agenda?
Dan, I'll just interject that we
Mhm.
did not have any public comment that came in by email either.
Okay. All right, so let's see. So if there are no changes to the agenda, we will move to committee meetings. I think I saw a note we wanted to move around the order of the committee meetings tonight.
No, we just want to move around the order of the items under facilities. So
Oh,
let's
I'm sorry.
start with
Okay.
Education Committee.
Okay, absolutely. We'll start with education.
Okay, we're going to hear about the remote learning like we talked about last time. So thank you, Miss Angela Dolzel. She's going to take us through it.
Angela, you're on mute. There you go.
Are we showing the presentation? Is that being shared? Or
Don, you have the screen sharing, right? Because you're the host. Don's on mute.
Don is on mute.
Yeah.
Okay, so you want me to share that presentation? Hold on, you have to pull it up. Angela, do you have it up? I should be able to turn it over to you.
no, I don't have it up. I can put it up though. Give me one.
Okay, remote learning update. Hold on.
You have it?
Yep.
Okay, great.
So it'll be Don's screen that shares then.
Perfect.
There we go.
Thank you,
Wonderful.
Don. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's good to see everyone again. Tonight, we are going to bring to you an update on remote learning. This update comes from observations from administrators, from other teachers, from collaborations, from meetings with staff members, as well as from surveys. We're going to begin with talking a little bit about instruction. So we'll go to the next slide. All right. So many of you, let's see, there we go. Many of you have an idea of what instruction looks like based on your own family's experiences or on your friends' family's experiences or neighbors that may have talked to you. But I want to open that window a little bit more for you and talk to you a little bit about what we are seeing as administrators happening in a variety of classrooms. So remote learning has caused many of our teachers to be more innovative. We've seen virtual lessons with whole class instruction, as well as some of our teachers are using breakout groups through Zoom to teach small groups in classes and have small groups working together. During some of these lessons, teachers have used anything from a dry erase board to document cameras to help demonstrate different concepts that they're teaching. We've even had teachers who have recorded lessons for students. Most recently, I saw a video of one of our special education teachers trying to help her students understand physics. And so utilized herself on a bike, teaching different vocabulary words from physics. I know that our orchestra teacher has students submitting themselves playing their music so that she's able to assess how they're engaging with their orchestra lessons. Just to name a couple of ways that our teachers are utilizing videos through WeVideo or Screencastify to help their students learn. They've had to look for innovative ways to engage their students in lessons. As I mentioned, we've had students creating video or teachers creating videos to demonstrate different concepts. Teachers have found ways, besides our orchestra teacher, using video to demonstrate her students' knowledge. Teachers have found other ways for students to demonstrate their knowledge through means that might be other than submitting writing samples or worksheets through Seesaw or Google Classroom. I know our band instructors are finding a variety of ways to engage our students as well at the middle school level. The instruction that's happening throughout the remote learning period has also led to what we see as a great collaboration among our staff members, especially at the elementary level, where we've had our grade levels collaborating weekly to help plan lessons, to help problem solve, to help each other out with different things as they're learning new technology throughout this period. In terms of special education. So with special education, teachers are providing direct minutes with students via Zoom. They're recording instruction, and they're also joining in classes that they co-teach. The special education staff members continue to team with the general education teachers to plan for accommodations and modifications for our students with IEPs. The related service providers are providing direct therapy via Zoom. And IEP meetings continue to take place with family and school team members participating remotely via Zoom as well. For our special education students who are eligible for extended school year programming, our staff is assisting to prepare them for the LADSI ESY program, which LADSI plans to deliver remotely. So now looking at slides, the next few slides, we're going to talk, Don's going to talk a little bit about technology during the remote learning period.
Really, since March 13th, just some of the changes or things that we've had to do from a tech perspective. We've expanded the one-to-one program first for grades 3 and 4. That was kind of the first phase of that. So 3rd and 4th graders, I believe it was the week after the 13th, were able to get those devices. And then we focused on, over spring break, focused on getting Zoom account services up and running for District 96 staff, and making sure that all the devices that we had out to students were also running the Zoom application. Then we expanded the one-to-one program down to grades 1 and 2 with the iPads, and we got those distributed. Since we aren't full one-to-one at kindergarten, due to some classrooms having multiple sections, and so the devices are used in both AM and PM sections, we did the kindergarten iPads kind of on an as-needed basis. We put out a communication to parents asking if they needed a device. And so then we had those available for pickup after spring break. As far as our department, really, it's just been an adjustment in expanding support. Our parents have become, community has really become our largest submitter of tech tickets, and supporting the devices while they're at home, or if parents are running into any issues with students being able to access resources. So my teams really switched into a mode of supporting parents and students at home. Also, obviously, with meetings like this is new. We're not, the Riverside TV's not broadcasting, and we've implemented these services so we can keep the board meetings available to the general public. We've also had to adjust our residency verification processes and registration portal capabilities, and I think we're going to be getting into that a little bit more later in the meeting. What we're doing now is we're focusing on looking at what are our remote telecommunications options, because one of the feedback we're getting from some teachers is that in making phone calls to parents, not wanting to necessarily have their cell phone out there to communicate to them. So we're looking at actually providing connectivity to our internal phone system, so it looks like it's coming from the district, and they could actually use soft phones on their computer. So we're really focusing on that more for next year if we need them. I think one of the other questions that has come up along the way has been, what is our accessibility at home? So we did put out a survey to parents whom we didn't already have the information, just to verify what their connection type. And we're pretty much at a 100% connectivity at home, just based on the type of connectivity. Most do have a high-speed connection, but there is a small percentage that do rely on smartphone browser access or mobile hotspot connectivity. Any questions on any of that?
All right. So we surveyed our parents beginning April 22nd, and we also conducted a staff survey beginning April 24th. We do have plans to survey the staff and parents again at the end of the remote learning period. And we'll also be conducting a student survey as well at the end of the remote learning period. Here you see a couple of the questions that our parents were asked. We asked about the workload for students and how it's been since spring break. You can see here that the majority of our families felt that the workload's just right, with a number of parents feeling that it's too much and a number of parents feeling that it's also too little. We also asked throughout these past 3 weeks since spring break, has their child had real-time connections with the teachers? And if they have, on average, how many times per week? And with this, we were trying to gauge where our teachers were at with virtual connections with students. You can see there that we have some that were at 0 times per week, and then we have some at 3 and 4 and 5 times per week, with the majority being 1 to 2 times per week. I do want to note that 0 times per week, when the survey was given, we didn't have a way of denoting at that time for parents whether they were talking about their homeroom teacher, special area teachers, encore teachers, who those teachers were. But for some parents, they did say that it happened 0 times per week. Next slide. And then the next 2 questions that we had were, I find the real-time connections between my child and their teacher to be valuable. And you can see that the majority of our parents do find this to be a valuable opportunity for their students, as well as a majority of our parents finding it to be a manageable opportunity for our students. And that question comes from hearing from some parents that it was hard to manage multiple Zoom meetings for a number of students in their families. If you have multiple children in your family, it might be hard to manage that. So we wanted to gauge where that really was at, if that was a serious concern. And by serious, I mean something that many parents were feeling, or if it was something that a small number of parents were feeling that we needed to keep in mind, but that it wasn't a problem for the majority. And as you can see here, the majority of our families are able to manage the virtual connections that their families are having. So there were, on the parent survey, 3 open questions that we asked, open-ended questions that we asked. We asked, what has gone well? What challenges are you having? And anything else that you'd like to share? And so I just want to highlight, of course, with open-ended questions, you can get a number of singleton answers, but there were some things that stood out because they were mentioned in a number of comments from parents. So when looking at the things that are going well, many parents appreciate the regular or daily Zoom calls that their students are having. Some specifically mentioned that their Zoom meetings take place in the morning and help set the tone for the day. And they really have an appreciation for when teachers use small group sessions to teach lessons. A number of parents appreciate the communication response time of their teachers. They like video lessons that the teachers have posted in case students weren't able to attend Zoom lessons, and some that are posting video lessons in place of that virtual synchronous learning, that real-time learning. They were using video lessons instead, and parents have appreciated that. There are a number of parents who feel the caseload is manageable and their teachers are well organized. And a lot of primary parents have appreciated the learning mats that first and kindergarten students or teachers have provided. And they also see Seesaw as an added benefit. With challenges, the most noted challenge for families has been trying to find a balance between helping their students while working at home. For some families, that challenge of finding a balance has been between helping their students and working outside of the home. A couple of parents mentioned that it's been hard for them to work outside of the home during the day and then come home and try to balance getting dinner ready and doing remote learning. And so that's been a challenge. And then for others, it's being a single parent and maintaining a household while also helping their students. So balance was the most mentioned challenge among our families. Other challenges have included completing the special area assignments. A number of our parents are having trouble completing the core subjects and then the special area assignments on top of that. So like the music, PE, and art lessons. Most of the parents mentioned how valuable they find those classes, but just that on top of the core lessons has been a challenge. And so they're looking for other ways, or they do other things as families that are physical in place of physical education or artistic, or some students are still taking virtual music lessons. So they're getting music in, they're just not doing the assigned work from the teachers. We have families that feel more work is needed because their students are finishing early. However, as you saw, the majority of our families feel the workload is just right. We also have families that would like to see multiple virtual sessions a week, and some virtual sessions are used for instruction as well as connections. The majority of our staff members are using Zoom to do more social emotional morning meeting, connection building type activities. And so while we do have staff members that are teaching through virtual instruction, there are a number of families that would like to see that happening more often. And there, in the beginning of the remote learning period, there were numerous emails coming from the district office, coming from principals, coming from classroom teachers. And then if you were a family that had multiple students, you were getting emails from multiple teachers. And so one of the challenges that was noted from parents is that there were a lot of emails coming out, and families have said that that seems to have improved. And we continue to talk as a district leadership team on how we can streamline communication so that we're not overloading our families. And with the open-ended question about anything else, the biggest thing that came up from the majority of the open comments here was that while families may have challenges, or while families may have ideas on how things could be done differently, the majority of our families did express appreciation to the District 97 staff for all the work that they've put into remote learning and trying to make this a smooth transition with all things considered. We also have a number of parents who are concerned about the next school year and what that's going to look like, whether it's remote or in person. And that is something that we continue to talk about as a district leadership team as well. So we also had a staff survey.
Can I ask a quick, this is Linda, can I ask a quick question just about how many parents completed the survey, and if we know like a breakdown of the grade levels?
I don't have a breakdown of the grade levels. We broke it out by school, but we did not break it out by grade level.
Well, school, I mean, because I can imagine just, you know, as a parent of teenagers, I'm having a very different experience than a parent of primary grade. So I know that if I filled out the survey, everything's very easy because my kids are doing their own work and it's not an issue. So I was just curious, like how, if we do it again, you know, at the end of it, it would be great to see like just the number and the breakdown by school house or, you know, the elementaries, if that changes the reflection a little bit.
Yeah, I'll second that. I was actually going to add that at the end. I'd be curious to see it by grade, because having younger elementary and most of the people I talk to having younger elementary, it is much different with the feedback that I'm getting. But it sounds like I keep encouraging people to fill them out. I know it's hard to sometimes get people to actually fill out surveys, but it sounds like I'm at least hearing a lot of the things in the survey that I'm actually hearing. So that actually makes me feel good. People are giving you the feedback. But yeah, it would be kind of interesting to see it by grade and like how that skew kind of changes with the age.
Yeah, I just worry if we took all of the Hauser kids out of it, possibly is, you know, does it look a little bit different at the elementary school? Just because I think it's two different experiences.
Well, even within elementary school, as you mentioned, you know, by grade, a first grader is going to have a lot different experience than a fifth.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I basically, I am with her kind of almost like not a personal assistant, but a coordinator for most of my day, and then I'm trying to work. So yeah, it's not necessarily a burden, but it is tricky just to manage. Whereas my high schooler, she's on her own and happily managing her things. So it's not difficult, but it's time. So
but getting to your point, Angela, how many people did respond, and do we have the break? You said you had the breakdown by school, so at least we have an idea of the type of responses we're getting.
So we have 112 parent responses.
Nice.
And broken up by, oh, wait a minute. I thought it was broken up by school. It is not broken up by school. The staff survey was. So
Okay.
what I will do then, and I was going to do this with the grade level, but I'll do it with both. When we do the end of the remote learning survey, the follow-up survey, I'll make sure we have a place to identify school as well as grade levels that your students are into.
Thank you. That'd be great. I'm done interjecting now. Sorry.
Are there any other questions though while we're talking about the parent survey before we talk about the staff survey? Okay.
What are we doing, or have we thought about anything with like interventionists, or I don't know what the actual term is, but students that are getting flagged for maybe falling a little bit further behind and they get pulled out? I heard you say like small groups, maybe that's really the way to do it, but I haven't heard a lot of feedback about small groups happening, but it sounds like small groups are happening. So maybe they're just happening somewhere else. Is the small groups for some of those catch up or additional assistant type things that are occurring, or is that a different purpose?
So it's actually hasn't been for the interventionists and like specialist areas. The small groups have been for general education classrooms. There's some legal documentation you have to sign if you're going to do small group lessons virtually, because it affects confidentiality when you have a small group of students who receive services, and then parents can see that so-and-so has services and so forth. So we actually have though, our wonderful interventionists and specialists have been working one-on-one with students. Our math interventionists have scheduled meetings, as do our reading specialists, with the kids that they were working with through the MTSS process. And they work regularly with their students one-on-one, and have commented that they've been seeing a lot of growth in their students based on those interactions.
Have the teachers, in whatever means, noticed like any additional students that have started falling behind that might need some of these services due to the lack of physical education that they're having, or physically being present in the school?
So they haven't noticed anyone that we've documented as marking them as a tier 2 or tier 3 through the MTSS process student. We do students who are not fully engaged. The social worker, psychologist, and principal of that building are contacting and reaching out to families. And those are students that we're keeping an eye out for as we look to the beginning of next year. We have started talking about how we'll assess our students at the beginning of next year to determine where we're at as a collective group at each grade level and in each classroom, and also where students are at individually, so that we can then determine if there is loss and how much that loss is, and then how we address that, whether that's by the whole class curriculum, which is that tier 1 piece of MTSS, or if it's going to be small group instruction through the tier 2 of MTSS, or if we would end up doing more individualized instruction based on what the data tells us when we return in the fall. And we're looking at not knowing what the fall looks like yet. We're looking at ways to assess both remotely as well as in person, continuing the in-person assessments that we do at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's more of what I've been thinking about recently, is just everything you read and where we're at in Illinois, and not even peaking for another like week and a half or something like that. And then potentially a second wave, and then strep and flu and all that. It's like, it feels more and more real that we're not actually going to go back to our schools in the fall. And so what can we do in the next month to really learn and really push ourselves as far as we can, and figure out what to do. But I'll just say, a lot of parents have kind of noticed that just without that constant regular structure and schedule, and and having a true educator. I'm not a good teacher. That's why I'm not in education. Well, it's one reason I'm not in education, but just looking at that and going, clearly some of the students are, I don't necessarily want to say regressing, but like clearly just that lack of repetition from just constantly being at home is I think starting to show up, at least from folks that I've talked to and stuff. So.
And I'll just say personally, Wesley, I am an educator and I am not a good teacher for my kids, right? So my first grader, I'm looking at the work he's doing for me, and it is not the quality of work that he would do in school.
Yeah.
He's a teacher pleaser and he works harder for his teachers. And then when he's at home, he is cranky and whiny. So he does not work as hard.
There's definitely that component for sure.
So don't feel bad that you're not an educator and feel like you're not a teacher. I am an educator and I still question my ability to teach my own children.
That does make me feel a little bit better.
Any other parent survey questions?
I don't know if this was, I don't know if we had a place to put in, you know, questions outside the strict survey results, but I'm wondering if anyone asked or was there any concern mentioned about screen time, particularly for younger kids?
There were a couple of people who had mentioned, in two actually, exactly, who had mentioned a concern of increased screen time, especially as you said, for primary age students. What I had read in some articles from the American Academy of Pediatrics is that parents should expect that screen time is going to increase during this remote learning period. It's just a natural part of where we're at, given that there are parents who will utilize screens to help out with their own childcare while they're trying to work from home as well. But the thing that they said, even with that increased screen time that we're going to see during this period, that we still have to pay attention to our children's cues to make sure that socially, emotionally, that they're doing okay, that they're going to have questions and that they're going to present their concerns and questions in different ways. Could be being clingy, it could be being cranky. And that we also have to, while we know screen time will increase because of instruction and because of the use to help with juggling work and childcare responsibilities, we do have to also, it encourages that the American Academy of Pediatrics also encourages that families work to go offline and to do activities as families, like going for walks, playing games, reading together, cooking, baking, sports, those types of things. And then also just being cognizant of sleep patterns and not letting this increased technology time throw our kids off of their schedules. So not letting students miss meal times or eating later or going to bed later, and also looking at screen time to be more positive. So while video games are fun for kids and a way to be on screens during that time that parents are trying to juggle workload and childcare, that we also look at educational games that they can play educational games, or that they're video chatting with relatives. Even my own 6th grader, we've let her chat more with friends because that's the only way that she's been able to socially connect with her friends. So looking at screen time also in that positive connecting way as well. So those are some of the things that I've just read up on recently of the increased screen time that we're seeing in our kids.
I did notice one thing. I have a 1st grader, and I did notice she was having some eye strain that she didn't normally have, just because of being on the iPad a lot. And even when we had her, you know, when they go to the doctor for the optometrist for kindergarten and all those exams, they had said, you know, be careful, make sure they're looking far away outside at trees and things to keep their vision in check. And I think that's probably my biggest concern now, is making sure she gets some outdoor time to have her visual perspective change, because they are indoors looking at a close screen all the time. And that's the one thing I did notice, for at least for my child. Every child's different, obviously, but that was something that was new for us. And so,
and that's a real concern, Sherry. We've noticed, I know during meetings with my counterparts throughout West 40, we've talked about even the teachers are noticing eye strain, and administrators with all the meetings that they're having are also noticing that eye strain. So definitely a real concern, not just in adults, but as you're mentioning, with our students as well.
And one thing that I'd like to also point out is that we do have on the iPads and the Chromebooks a device that parents can monitor their kids' usage of the internet, because one of the problems that I personally encounter is that YouTube is a great distractor, and so I do know teachers do use that for some instruction, but that does I need to block it when they're not in school, because my kids will get online and watch YouTube.
They're watching old board meetings?
I wish it was only that. Then I wouldn't have a problem, but SpongeBob is not it has its place, but not at 7 in the morning. So
right.
just something we might want to stress. I know Don has sent that out when we distributed it. We just maybe something we might want to stress again, that we do have that, so parents might have a little bit more control over that.
Okay, thank you.
As we move on to summer school, do you have anything else for the remote learning, Angela?
Just the staff survey results.
Okay, great.
So we'll go to the next screen that will show you a couple of questions that we asked the staff members. So you can see here, we wanted to gauge the staff's perception along with that parent perception of how many virtual meetings they're having. You can see when we ask the staff members how many real-time meetings they've had with their whole class, you see these responses. That 0 times per week, I do have to note, is because the staff survey did not delineate once they picked that they were a certified staff member, it didn't delineate if they were a special education teacher or a special area teacher or an interventionist. So those people that didn't have a whole class put 0 times per week because they weren't doing it. So that's where a large chunk of the 0 times per week comes. But then when they went to the next question about real-time meetings with individual students or small groups, that's where they responded that they were having those 1 to 2, 3 to 4, or 5 times a week. And the next slide then just shows that all of our teachers agree that real-time connections have been valuable for their students. So it's great to see that they are connecting and see the importance of that. For the staff survey, we surveyed 57 staff members. Most of the responses were from certified teachers, but there were a few secretaries and paraprofessionals that responded as well. We asked them 4 open questions. Those 4 open questions were, what support do they need as we continue through remote learning? What's going well? What challenges they have? And again, anything else that they wanted to add. Most of the staff members that responded said that they don't need any additional support, that the things that we've put in place have been very helpful for them. A few of them mentioned that they would like special area teachers to join their Zoom sessions. And I know that that is something that has started to happen, and that we have had music teachers, art teachers joining, art teachers joining the class sessions and connecting with students during those class sessions. Things that have been going well. A large number of staff members mentioned that the collaboration with their grade level team has been great. They mentioned that connections they are making with students through virtual meetings have been positive, and that it's been great for them too, because they really miss seeing their students. The technological professional development that has been provided by Jason Smith and Sarah Hickey was mentioned by many of our staff members. They've been great about putting out different videos to help students continue to utilize the resources that we have to instruct our students. Teachers talked about the use of the new technologies that they're using, and that they're excited that when we return to in-person learning, they can already see how this is going to change their instructional practices when we are in person. And they also mentioned that using WeVideo and Screencastify has been a positive experience for their students. Challenges, again, the most mentioned challenge is balance. Teachers are struggling to find the balance between balancing the different responsibilities of remote learning with their family responsibilities. And for some teachers, also balancing their own children's remote learning while they're doing their students' remote learning. That's been a challenge for them. Tracking student engagement for our primary students, especially when a number of the assignments are paper and pencil. It's hard to track how engaged our students are if they're not submitting assignments because it's done on paper and pencil. We're hoping that Seesaw will be a way to help address that. Trying to reach some of our disengaged students while also being cognizant of the different family dynamics that we have. There was a family that had even responded on the family survey, the parent survey, that a couple of their family members have COVID-19 or had COVID-19 at the time. And so our teachers are very cognizant that there are a number of reasons why students might be disengaged, but they're still trying to bring them into the fold. And then just wrapping all of our heads around assessing student progress has been a challenge across the board. As far as anything to add, the staff members just mentioned their appreciation to the administration for being supportive and understanding of their individual teaching styles. And they also mentioned that team collaboration has been essential for this remote learning period. So while we don't know what the beginning of next school year brings for us, we are going to utilize this data as well as the data from our upcoming surveys. Should we start with remote learning in the fall, we'll use this data then to help us plan how we can improve upon what we're doing and how we can move forward in a continuing innovative manner. Are there any other questions?
I just had a comment. I know you had just mentioned like the special teachers coming in. I know at least I'm only one person, but my own child's central teacher has brought in, like we've had Mr. House, the music teacher, come in, and then we had one of the librarians come in just for their casuals Zoom talk. It wasn't anything curriculum related, but she thought that was very cool. And then she has been doing things on paper, but also submitting them through Seesaw, so that there is some of that happening. I don't know how widespread it is, but that's what my own daughter does, because yeah, they're in first grade. they're not creating Google Docs. But
No,
some of that is happening, you know. Not that they could, I'm sure they could.
They
But.
probably could, yeah. Yeah, I don't have any questions. I mean, thank you for that. That's good. But a lot of things I've been thinking about and hearing about and just kind of curious about. So thank you for sharing all of that. I think I sort of get the sense from the small group that I am still able to actually get out and talk to and stay in connection with and everything, that it's kind of one of those, I sort of feel like it's been this wave effect that I'm sure everybody's kind of in the same boat. It's like, at first it was, oh, this is just 2 weeks, we'll just get through it. And then it was just, oh, it's another 2 weeks. Okay, we have to adapt. And then it was another month and it's like, oh God, what's going on? And now it's like, okay, this is our new normal. And now I sort of feel like the expectations are really starting to rise, because it's like, okay, if this is how we're going to be schooling, then how can we advance it? How can we make it better? And so and I think under you being able to share some of the challenges, I don't think everybody naturally thinks about the entire district population and the different challenges that you've highlighted here versus their own experience or their neighbor's experience, like you were kind of talking about in the beginning. But at the same time, like, how do we keep pushing the envelope, so to speak, but then also hearing on the staff side, some of the challenges that they have, but also being very excited about it. It's very, I think this helps a lot. So anybody that's watching this right now, or will watch it later, hopefully they're get a little bit broader of a view by it. So I think this is great. And I appreciated the survey. And I think beyond that, from the only thing I think would be interesting to break it down by grade. I don't know if school makes a difference or not, but definitely by grade. But with the collaboration and stuff, I have seen it, and I've heard a lot of parents say it does continuously get better. So like every time it comes out, there is some of those gradual improvements that are in there. So I think given the circumstances, this is just an absolutely crazy thing that I'm sure no teachers ever thought that they would have to go through. And so I do think they have adapted very, very quickly. And I think some of the comments now with just the challenges or what parents would like to see is kind of that new level setting of, okay, we're here, this is what we're doing. We might not go back in the fall. So how do we keep pushing technology and pushing education through technology and stuff like that? So yeah, I thought this was very good. So I very much appreciate the presentation on this and the information that's here.
Thank you.
I just have one last question. It's actually for Don, and my apologies. I should have brought it up earlier during the technology section. But I wonder. It seems like a few weeks back there was some concern about Zoom and security, and it seems like that things have improved on their end, or at least somewhat of what I've read. I don't know, Don, if you have any experiences or if anyone asked any questions on that.
Well, I think a lot of Zoom security issues really relied on the individual hosting the meeting implementing those features. So, making sure there's a password on the meeting, only allowing, not allowing anyone to enter the meeting, but to actually to utilize the waiting room, as opposed to just any users being able to just jump into the meeting. So what Zoom did is they altered their settings on the education side so that by default, those features were in place. But we also were communicating with staff when there were a lot of articles about Zoom bombing and some of those things that were happening that were being reported, that there were security measures that were there. It just really was dependent upon the host putting that in place. So we got communications out. Zoom put some of that in place, and that really kind of resolved itself. It's really more of a preventative measure.
Okay. Well, that's definitely good to hear. And again, Angela, definitely great presentation. Thanks for sharing that with us, and definitely thanks to all the staff for their flexibility. And definitely, we definitely see things improving every day, every week.
Thank you.
As people get more used to things, to this reality we're in now, I guess.
Are we ready to hear about summer school?
Absolutely.
And Angela, I don't know if you want, I mean, just by way of introduction. So as you know, our summer school is scheduled for late July and moves on into early August. We were kind of thinking and hoping that with a later start time than some of the local district summer school, that we would be able to do an in-person summer school. As we are, like you all are, just listening to the news and the progression of the virus, we think it's probably most likely and probably makes most sense to plan for a remote summer school. So as part of that, we've had conversations about the academic support programs, which is a very important part of our summer, but we've also always had a significant chunk of what we call enrichment classes, just an opportunity for families and children to have something unique and different to do. And it's been everything from kind of mad scientists and special art and special music and poetry and storytelling. And just, again, teachers often would pick sort of a passion of theirs to offer up as a summer school option. And then with our summer school program, it's always, it has to have enough of a minimum enrollment to run. So we really want to have kind of a board discussion. It's not really a presentation, just more of a discussion from the board. You know, if the board has kind of a comfort level with us, then planning to sort of push the word out about a remote summer school. And we have, I can tell you, been back and forth with our own leadership team. Does that mean we have more kids who want to come, or are we going to have fewer kids that want to come? And I think one of the things built into our system is that if enough kids don't come, then teachers know that they don't have a role, that we would only be putting teachers in a position if they have a minimum of probably about 5 children in a class. So we honestly don't know. I mean, even this feedback tonight is really helpful for everybody that's just kind of tired of remote learning. There are others that say, give me more. And it's a nice connection point for my child. And it's a nice connection point with adults, or even to see the other kids socially through Zoom while things are so limited in other ways. So again, just kind of proposing it as a discussion idea. To be very honest, I don't think we want to be the leaders in how to bring children together in a physically distanced, temperature taking, contact tracing or anything else involved. I know even just local news and national news stories are starting to talk about children potentially showing some symptoms of a virus, something related to the COVID-19 virus. So again, just being cautious and conservative on this, we would, I believe, be proposing a remote summer school. So Angela, I don't know if you have more to add on that. We've been talking about this. Pam, I know, is also on the panelist here, and or LADSI Special Ed Co-op did make a decision to move forward with the required extended school year all remotely. So it seems to me
know
that's the
RB
trend
is-
in the direction.
Oh, sorry. I know RB is doing remote summer school. I just heard about that, but I think that's probably the safe way to go.
I guess I just had a general question regarding summer school. And is it going to be a lot of like what we're doing now where there's part Zoom, part workbooks, or is it going to be all sort of, because I've heard like sort of variations of like what summer school is going to be. I mean, I heard one district saying it's going to be completely online Zoom, like the whole class is going to just be a Zoom class. I mean, is there any thought of like how we're going to be doing that?
So that's part of the conversation that we're in right now. We're looking at our software resources to see what resources we'd have that would supplement the instruction. It would need to be small group instruction as well, with Zoom lessons, actual synchronous instruction, because when you think about summer school, at least for the skill building part of summer school, we're going to need to be working on skills. So it can't be a lot of independent work. It's going to have to be instructional work, but then students may be released to go work on something that they were just taught, to go practice something they were just taught. So we're still working on exactly what it will look like, but it would include synchronous instruction with Zoom. It may include some type of software for math and or language arts. And then there would be some type of independent work, but it would be practice of what was being taught.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I would personally sign my kids up for that, because I think, we've always done the summer school thing. I don't remember what classes we had them in, but just as kind of like that hour in the day where they have something planned and adds a little structure to the day. But now, like hearing what you just said, like the math or reading or whatever it might be, type instructional stuff, I think with everything that I've seen and heard going on, that's like a perfect supplement going into a fall where we don't know if you're going to get that direct instruction back. So I haven't heard from a lot of parents. I haven't really asked a lot of people what they were thinking about summer school, but I just say from my standpoint, we were just talking about this a couple of days ago, like if we offer a math or some sort of core curriculum type stuff, like I will be signing up, and hopefully 4 more people will too. I'll have 2 in there. So hopefully we'll have 3 more in there. So I personally think that's a good idea if we can figure out how to make that work, and we have teachers that can actually accommodate that with their own lives and stuff like that going on. So
and that's what's going to be key, Wesley, is that we have the teachers, right? So
right.
When you think about small groups for this to be effective, for a Zoom lesson to be effective, what we're finding through remote learning is that whole class instruction is a lot more difficult than that smaller group instruction. So for it to be effective, we're going to have to have small groups, which then will limit the number of classes we can have based on the number of teachers that are willing to do remote learning summer school.
I think the thing that was encouraging was, it was 2 weeks ago now, and I agree, this is also fluid and people's attitudes and opinions change, but we did reach out to everybody that had told us back in January, February, that they were willing to teach summer school, and said, if it was remote, would you still be willing to teach summer school? And we had 100% say yes. So from a teacher perspective, I think we still have the same amount of teachers we had planning in quote unquote normal times. We have thought about putting kind of an all call out to additional teachers to see if, kind of Wesley, to your point, and that's the part that we're kind of trying to predict is, will this bring about more or less families interested in doing this? And so we're going to be reaching out to families, we're going to be reaching out to our staff, and we'll probably be doing that here just as the weekends and the new, next week, because we're going to kind of have to move pretty quickly to make this arrangement also.
When did you said, did you say late May or end of May for the second survey? I wonder, I don't know, would that be too late to maybe add that into, like, would you be interested in summer school instruction just to get a gauge from parents, or would we have to register? When would you be looking for parents to register that? Does that help drive whether or not any of this stuff is actually feasible? Like, what would you need from the community to determine whether this would be a plausible idea to even try to execute?
I'm going to take that, Angela. So the advantage we have is we're looking at a late July summer school.
Yeah.
So we think if we had some, I think we'd like to have feedback before the very end of our remote learning period, you know, before the last day of school. I think maybe we'll do it as a quick summer school only survey, even, you know, would you be interested in a summer school program? You know, if this were available, would you consider registration? Not that it has to bind people in any way, but to think
Right.
about, you know, do we have the right amount of personnel sort of, you know, potentially on call here?
And then I'm guessing that is probably going to, that's probably going to be impacted by grade level too, right? Because you're going to have to group kids of the same grade in those smaller classes too. You wouldn't be able to, like for an art class or something like that, you could have kids of different ages, but if you're doing academics, it would have to be like same level standards or whatever of knowledge. So yeah, that one's gonna be tricky. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I had one question. How do we price this the same way we always do?
So Jim is, we've been looking at that, and our goal with summer school has been to kind of meet, well, I shouldn't say, for enrichment, it's been to kind of meet our costs. With the support programs, we have, you know, contributed additional district dollars to that. So we are looking at potentially some adjustment, but again, we have to maybe kind of, you know, get some sense of numbers and then make some adjustments there. It would seem that probably parents may not be willing to pay as much for a remote class.
Will it cost us more because of the technology fees that go along in addition to it? Or is that already paid for and so it doesn't make a difference?
Most of what we're paying for is manpower, but as Angela said, there are some software tools out there. You know, it's an interesting time. Software vendors are busy right now with educational tools, and you know, we haven't made any decisions, but we are looking at some potential new tools. So to be determined yet.
Okay.
And and I don't mean just software vendors are busy, you know, out there with anything, but we have, you know, Angela's been in close contact with the West 40 curriculum people, and I've been in close contact with the West 40 superintendents. And this is a key question that everybody is looking to kind of make determinations now, is how, you know, how do we do this? How do we address any learning slide that may or may not have occurred because of this period of remote learning? And then given that we've always had a program in place to support children that have those academic needs, you know, how do we enhance that also?
Martha, can you remind me, and Angela, can you remind me, for the academic skill building, did we identify kids ahead of time and do special invites and then allow it to be open towards everybody else? And do we still continue that philosophy? And are there more kids who are wanting extra help? The same? I'm sure remote learning has challenged us in how to assess current skills.
You're asking all the exact right questions. And if you'd like to join our meeting tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock with Kim, our summer school principal, and this whole team that's on the panel, these are exactly the critical questions. We use winter data, what we call our winter benchmark data, to invite families, invite children into the program. And we've had a lot of questions if we need to sort of spread that out a little wider. Just hearing from some of you tonight too, it also makes me think about, what about an enrichment class that's not required academic support, but an enrichment class that's kind of just academics for the fun of it, for children that, you know, sort of, Wesley, you brought up parents that might be concerned and maybe the data wouldn't really show that there's been a learning loss or a learning problem, let's say, but to still do something that just would really enhance the learning that happened this past spring.
Yeah.
So we will come to you with a more firmed up plan, but I think for now, just getting, it sounds like, you know, you would support the remote learning, and that sounds like the direction we need to go just from everything that's going on right now from a health perspective and student safety perspective.
I would, for sure.
Okay, I think we just have, thank you, Angela and Martha, for all of that. That's I'm kind of glad I'm not making those decisions because it's a lot of things to consider. We are going to hear from Don, I believe, about our residency verification and updates, because obviously in person is a little bit more tricky for verification. So
Correct. And I'm sure you all recall, it wasn't too long ago, a few months ago, we really looked at reducing the number of families that had to come in and do in-person residency verification. Really focused on a subset with our new families within the district and other subsets. Well, now given the pandemic, excuse me, we really need to adjust that again, and we've had to open up things more to more digital submissions. So with a lot of the families, because they are new to the district, our way to communicate with them has been through, once they register, when we have their contact information, but letting them know that that we have changed some of the programming within our registration portal. So now it does accept digital uploads where it hadn't previously. So allowing them to submit that way, or our registrar has also been in communication with them. If they have any issues uploading the documents, they can also send them via email. And if for some reason they don't have a means to get the documents digitized, there's also, she's also been scheduling appointments, or if they have any questions, if they have needs where they need to do in person. If there have been any in-person registration appointments scheduled, families have been instructed that, you know, we're to wear face masks, we're observing social distancing. But really the big change is increased communication and just the ability now to allow for digital uploads of documents where we weren't allowing that in the past.
Martha or Dawn, do you know if we've had, maybe it's too early to tell, but any shift in the numbers of new students that we normally get compared to, maybe it's hard to tell because we get them through August, but have you noticed any changes in the numbers of new residents or students?
I can't speak to that at the moment because we really haven't been looking at, well, how many new registrations do we have? It's something that, you know, we can definitely get back to you on that and take a look at either information we had last year or, you know, the bulk of our new students are kindergarten. We can look at that kindergarten class to see how many have registered thus far. But that's definitely something we can report out perhaps, you know, next week sometime.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we often get, I know Martha would say we get them late August sometimes, or even some new in September. But I was just wondering if there were any lags or differences that you noticed, but maybe it's too early. So, yeah.
Well, we can check year to year because we do have the incentive for kindergarten. We had the early bird registration, which ended April 30th. So we can at least look at our April 30th numbers and do a comparison to last year. And then we can also see if people, if families have started the registration but just haven't completed it.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think are there any more questions for Dawn or Martha or Angela? Because otherwise I'm going to move it, direct it to Mr. Miller for finance. Okay, Mr. Miller.
Jeff, you're on mute.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
There you are.
Yeah, I think there was only, thanks, Sherry, there's only one item I think that Mr. Fitton wanted to discuss with the board. Mr. Fitton, do you want to cover that point?
Sure. Normally the budget isn't approved until September. I think it's required to be approved by September 30th. And there's some big spending that we wanted to alert you to and make sure that it was okay to start ordering in July so that we're ready to go for school. And on my memo there, it's mostly technology, and it's part of replacing some technology that we do every year and annual renewal on software. So we just want to point out that some spending needs to be done before the budget's approved and make sure that it's all right.
Does anyone have any questions about any of these items that are listed? I think there are 3 items. Is that right?
Right.
The only thought I have is that I don't know how many Chromebooks we have in total, but it feels like a lot of Chromebooks. So is that a third? Is that a half? Is that 90%, 100%? Like how much of our total Chromebook inventory would this be replacing?
Well, what we do with the one-to-one program, 6th graders, every class of 6th graders get a new device, and that's a device that they have for 3 years.
Okay.
So this is the annual purchase of those approximately 200 Chromebooks, the cases, the licensing that goes with that. So that's our annual one class full of students Chromebooks.
Gotcha. So essentially a 3-year cycle of going all the way through. Okay.
Correct.
Anyone else? Does anyone else have any questions about the either that item or any of the other 2 items?
This is just a minor thing, but since we have so many Chromebooks and iPads that are out more than usual, do we know if we'll need replacements for any of those, or are we collecting them to check them? Or that's a hard decision whether we let them keep them over the summer. How do we know what needs maintenance, or if we need to purchase replacements for those? If something happens at their house, or
Well, that's with the one-to-one devices that 6th grade. Well, the middle schoolers have for 3 years. The junior high has 3 years. We collect the 8th grade devices, and so that provides us a pool of spares. And so a lot of what we use even when families have run into technical issues, we haven't been, collecting the broken device and then giving it back to them. We're just giving them spares. So we've already talked with the junior high about the administration about the need to collect these devices because they do have a lot of value in terms of providing hot swaps for kids that need just a repair.
right? Because we have 3rd and 4th graders with Chromebooks now too. So no, thank you. I didn't know that. I guess I did because I had my child go through that, but I forgot. Yeah.
Well, I know that we are looking at, what our needs possibly would be for the fall. Our immediate need is to get these for the 6th graders. But if for some reason we did need to come back with an additional purchase, whether we're using some of the grant funds that are available or what, we'll base it off of our inventory numbers. Hopefully we get a high percentage of the 8th grade devices back. Normally we have them in school and we can just collect them from them. Now we're relying on drop-offs and such.
Is there a plan for drop-off of Chromebooks?
It's in the works.
In the works, okay.
Talk about it. We'll call it a good draft, and I think it's almost ready for final publication.
I was just curious if I missed it, but I'm sure.
And it's been, as you can understand, linked to this conversation. If we're right back at remote learning next year, what do we really need to do during the summer months? And
Yeah.
so Don and his team.
Right. I know. Why collect them if they're just going to use them again?
Well, I mean,
kind of silly. I don't know.
I don't know. I understand your point, and Don, you probably have your own thoughts on this, but my thought is that we should collect them back up. I mean, it just for maintenance purposes. I know there's things that we do to it. Isn't that correct, Don? We wipe the computers clean. We basically get them ready for the next year.
With Chromebooks, there is not like a wipe process. We make sure that they get upgraded. There is a summer maintenance that we go through. What we're identifying, because there is, there's 2 sides of this, and there's some compelling arguments on either side. So what I'm really trying to identify are what are the devices that I absolutely need to get back so that next year is a smooth transition. And so those are the discussions that we're having with our leadership team currently.
Well, in for eighth grade, I mean, 100% of them should come back, right? Because now you're going into a different district with different financial responsibilities. So,
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right, eighth grade, we know we want to collect, and then there's some other grade levels that, again, just for the purpose of making sure that next year is a smooth transition, that we've identified that we'd like to also collect.
Right, because my first grader has an iPad that she doesn't normally have at home. Normally they're on the cart at school.
yeah.
Right.
You know, so there's all those kids too.
Any other questions on the pre-approval for these budget items? The 300, it's like it's 305,000, 80,000 for the Chromebooks, 200,000 for the annual software renewals, and 25,000 for the communication encore class replacement hardware. Does anyone have any questions about that, or are we all okay with pre-approving this?
I'm okay with it.
Okay.
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
And our plan is we'd actually make that an action item at the May 20th meeting, right, Jim? That's what we're thinking, but to have you have that opportunity to preview it now.
Yeah, that's what we've done in the past. So
Sounds good. All right. So I think we're set with that then. Thank you, Mr. Fitton.
thanks.
Thanks, Don.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. All right, next up is Facilities Committee. And then I think here we were going to have some reordering of things.
I think we decided we'd start with the furniture and then move to playgrounds and then move to kind of a general overview. Right, Ramesh? That's what we'd kind of decided might make most sense. Furniture might be the most straightforward. So I don't know.
Ramesh, you're on mute?
Yes, I'm back.
Yep.
Okay. Can I go ahead and share my screen, Don?
I will turn the host controls over to you.
Great.
It's all yours.
Okay, the last time we met on the board, let me just share my screen. Okay, do you see my screen now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last time we met as a board, there was a discussion on going out to bid for the furniture procurement for the various schools. And on April 20th, we put the project out to bid to multiple vendors. We had invited 8 vendors. We received bids from 6. There was a slight hiccup the day before the bids because our attorney, Brian Crowley, said that we had to receive a hard copy of the bids. We were not allowed to receive electronic copies. So we had to hurriedly issue an addendum the day before, and 5 of the 6 bidders managed to get us paper copies. We opened the bids at 1 o'clock on the 30th. The bids were read out aloud, meeting the legal requirement. The bids were tabulated, and then DLA proceeded to review the bids that were received. Steve, do you want to chime in and discuss the bids? I'm going to put them up on my screen. So,
Sure. So of the bids that we received, again, I believe there were 5 of them.
5 valid bids. Yes.
Yes. There was 1 bidder, the Frank Cooney Company, that bid all 7 packages that we had as part of the bid package. They were the only bidder that provided a number for all of the packages. The other bidders picked and chose packages to bid on. And as a result, even when you look at all of the individual packages, Frank Cooney was the low responsible bidder for all 7 packages. There are.
The key factor here is the lowest responsible bidder. One of the questions that we were asked is, why wouldn't we have gone with KDI design at 37,000 as compared to 94,000 for Cooney on the Ames bid package 2? The reason for that is this package is not complete. So KDI picked and they were choosing what elements to bid. So if there was a requirement for 100 chairs and 50 tables, he only bid 10 chairs and 12 tables. So the only complete bid was from Frank Cooney. The main reason for this is furniture, even though a chair consists of 4 legs and a platform, you still have to go out to different vendors to get a complete bid. I mean, because there are so many different types of chairs that are made, especially in the school systems. So when the packages were designed, we collected information on all the different types of chairs, and Cooney's bid was the only one that is complete throughout the process, and they were substantially lower on the total as well. I mean, if you recall, I said the budget was approximately $300,000 for furniture procurement. His number, with including all the elements, is at $221,000. So it's a very good number that we've received. And we also had a small alternate to pick up miscellaneous elements. So we actually are recommending that the board complete the package along with the $221,000. They go in and award the small alternate as well, so that we have a complete package of furniture for all the schools at the end of construction. It totals approximately $240,000 as identified in the letter. It's $240,000 even would be the complete package.
Ramesh, what was the alternate items? Do you remember?
Steve, you can just fill me in on that one, please.
I believe there were 2 items in particular. One had to be was a change in a desk for the principal at Central. The original desk that was bid was a sit-stand desk. That was what was requested. But in case the bid package came in too high, we put an alternate in just for a regular sitting desk. So there was a slight change in the cost between the sit-stand desk and the sit desk. And then at Blythe Park, there was an alternate for their additional chair hooks or backpack hooks that go on the back of chairs, as well as additional storage on the chairs for 51 chairs at Blythe Park. So between those 2 alternates, it raised the total number to a number that's just less than 240,000. And we thought to be able to have discussion with the principals to make sure that we want to include those items. Again, they were originally requested, but we want to verify that that they want to proceed with those items. So we're asking the board to approve that number, which again is significantly less than what the budgeted number was.
Right. So, yeah. Any questions on the furniture bids? We would like to award this at this meeting because we have a fairly long lead time item on this, and the contractor is responsible for the installation of the product starting the first week in August.
This may be another question for Steve or even Jim. What's the general lifespan of a piece of school furniture?
I don't know exactly, but I would say somewhere between 15 and 20 years.
Okay, that's what I was guessing, but I wasn't sure it was that long.
Yeah.
I know I've taught with some that are from the 60s, but those are really old pieces. A little bit harder construction with the steel they used to use, but
a lot heavier too.
Yeah.
Ramesh, the way we've set up the agenda, as you can see, is just we have the furniture, playground, and construction update, and then we actually added an old business to give the board an opportunity to then go back and do action on the furniture and the playground, just as the next item after the facilities committee report.
Got it. Okay, I'll move on to.
Sorry, Ramesh. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just did have one question. I know that they are the lowest responsible bidder, but I was wondering if our architects had any experience with this vendor before and if it was positive.
Yes, absolutely. I think at the very end of my second page of my recommendation. We have done work in the past with this vendor and they are very responsible, very responsive. I think you will see a good product come out of their contract with you.
Oh, there it is. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep.
I see it. Thank you. Sorry, Ramesh, go ahead.
That's okay. So I'll move on to the playgrounds. So I'll talk about this. I'll bring up the tabulation first. So on the same day, on April 20th, we went out and sought proposals as a change order from Bergland on the playgrounds. At the last board meeting, it was presented, and the request was that we should bid both the options that were presented rather than picking just one option. There was a full-size scheme and a slightly lighter scheme in case we were going to go through the budget. So we received proposals. These are not bids. They were proposals from 3 vendors, and we went ahead and evaluated their proposals. And following that, in your board packages, you'll notice there was a set of numbers that was presented. So Imagination is the first company that presented to us, gave us a proposal. That's the basis of design. That means what you get from them is exactly what you saw in the previous presentations. The slides, the zip lines, it's exactly what is shown in the package. Now, to have an open competition, we also said that other vendors could propose if they had similar pieces of equipment. So that's how Larson and Park Creation submitted. The important thing to notice out here is that they bid similar items, not exactly the same item. The reason being, Imagination was the basis of design. So when we receive the bids, you'll see that the preferred vendor, Imagination, fell right in the middle between Larson and Park Creation. I mean, the difference was substantial. 124,000 for Park Creation, and Imagination was at 170,000 at one time. But then we went and looked at the bids themselves, and we noticed that Park Creation had left out a couple of elements, including the site furniture, the benches, and the bike racks, while Imaginations was the complete bid. So we asked them to go and complete their bid, and this number from Park Creation actually went up by about $10,000. So it's about $135,000 now. While Imagination, we asked them to give us their best and final offer, and they dropped their price by $10,000. We were allowed to do this negotiation with them because this is not a bid. This is not, we're going as a change order through Bergland. So Bergland's negotiating the contract on our behalf. This is an advantage that we have when we go through our construction manager in this process. So after we received this information, we shared it with the playground committee, and Wesley and Dan Hunt joined us this morning, and they offered us their comments on this process. So I'd like to turn it over to Wes and Dan to discuss what they brought up this morning, because I think they were important insights into the whole process.
Yeah. You want me to go, Dan?
Yeah, go ahead, Wes.
All right. So I got to this a little late last night. It kept sticking with me over the weekend as I was reading through this and everything, just how different this is compared to, bidding out a X size wall or electrical or whatever, where kind of specs are specs, where here's we got like varying equipment like we talked about it the last time. I think what I'd like to call it, Jeff, thank you for, didn't even occur to me until we talked about last meeting when you're like, why don't we just bid both of them? I'm glad you did, because that sparked a ton of other, as I'm comparing them, the visuals and all that kind of stuff. It was like, okay, now that I'm seeing it, if I took this one from this one and put it here and there and everything, trying to really wrap your head around what are you looking at, what are the costs, where are the variations, how are there gaps, like what is really driving the disparity between the premiums, the costs and everything here. It really set off a number of different things. So one thing that I was asking here is, what are the key criteria to really look at? What are the biggest differences? I think some of the things that Ramesh and Steve and Ryan highlighted was imagination. We had DLA had gotten a lot of their information from Imagination and worked with them with the scope. So like Ramesh said, the visuals that DLA were to put together for those initial presentations, these are those exact pieces of equipment. With Park Creation, it was a different brand, but it was essentially as close as they could get. And then with Larson, I know we had, and I didn't write good enough notes this morning, but there were some, I think we had some gaps or something like that with the Larson quote. Steve or Ryan, I don't know if you could help me out with that one. I can't remember exactly what you guys were talking about.
Larson did his own substitution. I mean, of the product, yes. So.
Okay. And so when you really look at like what Ramesh was saying, I think we're down to about
it's 35,000.
It's 30. Okay. So the 124, does that include
25,000? 25,000.
Yeah, 25.
Yeah.
Because you got to bump the Park Creation one up a little bit.
Correct.
So relatively minor gap. I mean, I know we're talking about 25 grand, but with the numbers that we're talking about, a relatively minor gap in the cost here. And so we know Imagination. We've DLA has worked with Imagination. We know the specs and the design and all that kind of stuff. So we've got a little bit more familiarity there compared to Park Creation. But I think the main question here was, all right, now because it's not just a certain type of brick or a certain type of copper or whatever, like we're actually talking about pieces of equipment and how they're constructed, how they're designed, what they look like, what their components are, and things like that. Really looking at these designs and being able to go back to the playground committee, being able to go back to one of these vendors, just looking at one vendor and saying, okay, well, if you took this out, so I'm just going to use the zip line because that's been a big hot topic with the kids in our discussions and all that kind of stuff. So let's just say we want to take the zip line out and we want to put in another smaller climber or an extra set of swings or something like that. What would that really look like? How would that impede our safety barriers? How would that affect our cost? And really get kind of that best case scenario playground that's still within our budget, but really designed around how the kids are going to use the space for a very long time to come, 30 years or so, hopefully. And the recommendation from Ramesh and Ryan and Steve was to at least pick one to go forward with. And because the style of the equipment or the brand is going to be the same, and then you're talking about the different pieces of equipment, the cost will change if we're going to swap things out. But overall, we had a budget of, I think it was like 200 or something like that. And besides Larson, the other two are pretty significantly lower. So we've got a little bit of money to play with and swapping out costs and still staying within the same general range here. But at least going down to one vendor and working with that one vendor to create our like final design of this is what we want. We're going to buy it and ship it, and install it, and still have it done within the Berglund overhead contract. So we're not increasing any additional cost for site supervision or anything like that. Was really the recommendation going forward, is just pick one of the vendors that we like their style of equipment. And then from there, we can actually work with them to create a final budgeted, we can even put parameters around what that like maximum cost would be or something like that. But I don't think the cost would be a significant change really. If from the committee's perspective, they've been pretty happy with the designs that we've had out, which is exactly what Imagination quoted. So that's kind of where we were. And I think, I'm sorry, I actually just blanked on whether you just said this or not, but I think you had said that part of our cost savings, or what you told us earlier, part of our cost savings were relative to some like site design costs, because these vendors are familiar with Berglund. They actually aren't going to charge us some of the fees that they would normally charge to like survey the site and do some of that extra work. So we actually had some cost savings by going through this process instead of like completely bidding it out separate from Berglund and everything. So that's where some of these numbers are coming in. There's actually some built-in cost savings with the process that we're going through as well. So
that's correct. I'd like to interject on that. So since it's going as a change order through Berglund, we don't have to pick the lowest bidder. That's number one. We can go with the lowest responsible. We can go with a person or the vendor who we feel provides the best value to the district. That's number one. Number two is if we had gone out to open market outside of Berglund's contract, then this same imagination or whoever we pick has to find a general contractor who prepares the site for them to do that work. So the cost would go up significantly higher. So there's a big advantage of having this project completed under Berglund's contract and finishing it in August rather than later. So there's a big plus, win-win-win for the district by choosing a vendor at this stage. The only requirement is that we would like to give them a go-ahead because procurement again is delayed. There's a timeline for it. We thought that by May 20th, we can decide on a final design and the number. We would proceed with that.
And then just to the alternate one, this is part of the reason I'm picking on the zip line is, so the zip line takes up a big footprint, and hopefully none of the kids are watching. Hopefully they're all in bed, all the ones that are going to be playing on the equipment. That was I think that was a big word in the word cloud that we looked at, but it takes up a very large footprint. It's in this case, it's one track, and it's an accessible design. The alternate one is you can actually make these a 2-track system, and we could put in like a rope with like a disc seat on it, which I think from listening to the kids in a couple of the sessions that I was in, I think that's more of what they were thinking about is like hanging or swinging or whatever, rather than like a seat belt car seat thing that you zip back and forth on. That alt one bid would be to add a second bar to it. So in order to do a zip line, I think if I remember correctly, that was like $10,000 for the zip line and then another $12,000 to add a second one onto it. And so then I started thinking about the comments of the kids talking about the swings. And I think currently there's 4 swings over there, and they talk about waiting in line to swing with their friends and stuff. And so it just really got me thinking as I'm looking at the site designs and then these like more firm numbers on this, is that really the best use of the space for the maximum advantage of kids being able to play on it, which I think it was Ryan pointed out that the climbers have pretty high capacity, but I think we were only having 2 swings there. And so one thought I had was, okay, how much do those kids really want the swing, the zip line? If we took that zip line away and we put other things there to make it more of an expandable space and more of a diverse space with different pieces of equipment, if we could get that in front of the playground committee and get feedback from them, especially the folks that do a lot of the lunchtime supervision and kind of observe how the kids play and where some of those bottlenecks are. And then we replace those with more climbing, imagination type, creative play type equipment that wouldn't necessarily create a line feeling, so to speak, and potentially even either swap cost or reduce cost on that, and then kind of take 2 of those and let Mr. Gearman reach out to the parents and kind of engage the students and just kind of get a student vote at the various grade levels Dan kind of brought up, a kindergartner or first grader or an early learner, since they're going to hopefully be there next year, versus a 5th grader are going to play with that equipment very differently. And so kind of giving the kids one last opportunity to say choice A, choice B, and then go from there, but have sort of the pre-approved, these are what our costs are. The board is comfortable with the designs and the cost with it before going out with that. And so here's kind of our general parameter with it. So the recommendation, and I've been thinking about this most of the day, would be to go with Imagination, because we're a little more familiar with them. We've worked with them through the design process. The equipment is really nice. I looked all that equipment up last night, all the different things that they scoped out, and it's pretty comparable to the Little Tykes. It feels a little more, to me, it feels a little more, it doesn't feel as kiddish, if that really makes sense. The Little Tykes stuff, from what I could tell when I'm looking on the website, feels a little more younger aged for a school playground type thing. But at least looking and saying like, okay, we're willing to work with Imagination within this scope, within these parameters, create a final design. Martha's pretty confident that we could get the playground committee together on a Zoom call, or at least feedback through other mechanisms within our time frame of getting all this information back, working with Imagination, getting revised specs, revised costs, all that kind of stuff, and really get all that feedback before May 20th so that we can feel comfortable about doing a final site design, but at least giving us, we've got the initial groundwork done here, and then another 2 weeks to kind of work on final tweaks and designs and everything before we actually commit to a dollar amount, cutting a check.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a couple additional points from why I jumped on the call this morning as well. I guess in reviewing these bids, there was a detail I guess I had missed when we'd seen the first site designs or the first site proposals of that zip line in particular. And I remember how it was mentioned, how kids were really excited about it. I guess what became clear to me as I was looking at the bids is that that zip line was for accessible kids, with a car seat design instead of something a little bit more traditional, which you've seen on, at least I've seen on some playgrounds of, a pole and with a disc that you can either sit on or stand on and ride it down, as opposed to a little bit more involved of getting into a seat and potentially putting on straps and the like to get into it. I could not have supported any design with just that one zip line, with an accessible zip line, just given the population of that school, who they're serving, who their audience is. And I just felt in particular a single accessible zip line would be very vulnerable to kids, using it in unintended fashions at a time when instructors are not around. Since it's a public playground, it's always going to be accessible, and there are always going to be kids coming on there. So I was happy to hear that there is an option, and there is space available as well to have a second zip line that's more traditional, and then coinciding with the accessible zip line. In fact, that was something that when I was talking about it with my wife, that was one thing she mentioned. She'd seen a playground that had a similar side-by-side setup, and thought that was really just a great thing, and provided options and inclusivity for all. And it also, I guess, could, since we're talking about one zip line being a pretty having the potential for a bottleneck, the more if you have 2 lanes of that can alleviate that as well. Going back to the idea of the park creation with using the little Tykes equipment, I do share Wes's thought that it just kind of looks a little bit more designed or built for younger kids. I would worry about the older kids being a little bit disappointed to that. But then also, I think we had asked Stephen, his thoughts on the design or the building strength of those. And I don't know, Stephen, if you weren't able to give a conclusive answer on that, just because you haven't had experience with it. But I think you were thinking that it's potentially the imagination equipment was a little bit of better build quality. Am I speaking too much there? Go ahead.
No, I think you're correct. I believe the imagination equipment has a lot more steel components, say some of the posts and so on for the different levels, whereas the park creation might be relying more on the plastic material. But I don't know that definitively, but that's just the feel I get right now.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that.
And then
Go ahead.
really quick before we open it up for broader discussion, I do just want to slide in a quick comment for transparency purposes. We did have we had a very broad group on the playground committee, including parents, and one parent that was on the committee actually did work for Imagination Station for some part of her career. No longer works there, works in a different industry, but just to make sure that was on the up and up for any kind of conflict of interest type stuff. We did have a parent that is familiar with them as being a former employee, but is not currently an employee. So just wanted to get that out there.
Yep, definitely. Thanks for bringing that up.
I just had a couple of questions. I guess last time we met, I thought my understanding was when we met last time was that the playground committee had 2 designs. One was the design they recommended and wanted to go forward with, and one was an alternate design that was less expensive. They thought would be less expensive in case it didn't come into budget, and that we were going to go out then to these different vendors and get prices on them. And it sounds like now we're saying that we've got the prices, but we're not going to go with the the lowest one for the reasons you gave. You said the quality is not the same, which, okay, that's fine. I don't know anything about playground equipment, so I'll accept whatever you're saying on that. But the idea that we're going to go out and sort of continue to work on the design and possibly increase the amount of money spent above what the numbers come back, I guess that feels to me like we're kind of changing what we had intended to do. At least my understanding of what we had intended to do. Is that, I mean, am I totally off base here, or?
No, I think that's a good question. I don't think it would increase the cost. I think if anything, it would. So what we went to bid with is option 1 and option 2 with imagination. That is exactly what we looked at and said we want to have bid, and they gave us exactly those designs because it was their equipment that we used to build the design in the first place. So it is 100% exactly option 1, option 2. What I'm looking at is if we go with option 1 for that, which is the middle bid, we have the additional cost of the alternate 1 to do that second zip line, because that was a recommendation that went out with the bid, is for that zip line having 1 or 2 lanes to it, as Dan was kind of talking about. Option 2 is that lower bid. So what I'm kind of suggesting is we look at an option that's somewhere between 1 and 2. So hypothetically less than 160, but possibly more than 121, or depending on whether you want to look at the alt 1 as a possible less than 172 or more than 121. But really just my thought is, do we, now that we're actually seeing it and seeing the space design and thinking about some of the traffic jam type comments that the kids were talking about, is there a feasible option to replace that zip line that still gets a broad use of everything that we want, minus like one thing, just looking at that final design and kind of really thinking about that. So I don't think that the cost would end up going more than what we have in front of us, but they'd be somewhere between option 1 and option 2, assuming we go with any of these vendors.
Okay.
But just really trying to hone that, getting that final feedback. Okay, here is the final thing. Here's the final vision. Is this what we're finally agreeing on? But at least just picking a vendor, but maybe not a final cost right now.
On that topic of cost, are these costs are they all in cost? I mean, is this it in terms of the cost, or are there other costs that are hidden that we're going to discover later? How does that work exactly?
No, this is the cost because this is the complete package when it's married with Berglund's contract.
Okay.
If you had not gone with Berglund, you'd gone outside, like in the fall after Berglund was done, the numbers would have been substantially higher because there's site work that you have to redo. Now Berglund's going to do that site work as part of the base contract.
Okay. So I guess, I don't have a strong opinion about zip lines or anything else. But I guess if the board is okay with Wesley's proposal to take it back to the committee for further, design tweaks, I'm okay with that too. But I do think we need to set a firm number so that what I wouldn't want to have come back is that, and I'm sure that's not your intention either, Wesley, is that, it comes back with some really drastic changes and cost increases, and that the company comes to know it's going to cost more. I wouldn't want to be in that situation, essentially. So I think that, if the board is comfortable with making these proposed changes, I think we need to be clear about, what our constraints are.
Yeah.
Well, something important to note. I think the original budget we went into this with was 300, I believe. So not saying that we want to go up that high.
I don't think, Dan, we never set a budget as a board. We never set a budget.
Well, I think that was the expectation, was it?
Yeah, we had a general expectation of somewhere between 200,000 and 300,000. So I mean, we're significantly below where we initially thought our bids were going to come in.
I don't think we had that conversation, as far as I recall, about exactly what we wanted to spend. So.
Well, okay. Well, regardless, not saying that that's something we would want to go to now, but that should at least be a part of it. Well, I guess you're not recalling that, but
I think the stuff that Ramesh put together with all the different variations of contingencies, there was something like 200,000 or 300,000 in there as part of the overall project for playgrounds.
Right. I remember the $200,000 in Ramesh's budget, but I don't think that's a number that the board ever sort of said, yeah, that's how much we were willing to spend. I think.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. No, I mean, I agree. I mean, I do recall, I mean, no, the board never came out and said, okay, we're not going to spend more than $200,000-$300,000. They do, but as a ballpark, I'm okay going forward with this. proposal. I mean, understanding that, I mean, having done construction, I know there might be little tweaks, but I mean, I'm fine with like the minor design changes going forward with this.
I would like to interject on one point, in the sense that, because the next subject I'm going to bring up is a very important subject, which is the guaranteed maximum price. So you can't get to a guaranteed maximum price unless you have one of these numbers firmed up too. So that number has to be inserted into the contract. So it's very important that the sooner we get to that number, the better it'll be, so that we can come to a comprehensive. But I'll get to that in the next board.
I'm going to say that I'm with David on this, if I can insert words into your mouth, but Wesley's proposal to take the option 1 plus the alternate 1 as a top end, plus or minus a little bit, you've got some flexibility, and then make design tweaks based on your committee comments is perfectly acceptable.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah, I'm okay. I agree. I don't want it to come back with a lot of drastic changes after you meet with the playground committee. I would hope that you guys would solidify that. So.
And I don't want to do that either. I mean, I think the playground did some nice design work, gave a lot of great input. It's kind of a nice opportunity that, Wesley had suggested, kind of a stamp of approval plus a little bit, I mean, I think there are some minor considerations. I think they would appreciate that also. Probably in normal times, we would have done that more easily, but I think we can set them up with a Zoom session next week. And I think it's just that zip line seating issue, perhaps the 2-track zip line, and I'd appreciate their input on that.
Yeah, and that's really my only hang up with it. So I think just be sure before we put this in the ground, is this zip line really, is it really going to get used? Is it really practical for the cost that's in there, or would we be better suited for a swing or something like that? Which a lot of the stuff I'm thinking of is cheaper. So doing a 160 plus 12, doing a 172 maximum cost. I mean, we either get this or we get some sort of reduced, maybe not all the way reduced down to option 2, but definitely not like going up to 200, 250 or something like that by any means.
Okay. Should I move on to the next subject?
Yes.
Okay. This is the construction. As I normally show some pictures of construction at the various sites. So this is Ames in progress right now. So we are still trending about 5 to 7% behind our schedule at this time. There are multiple reasons for it. I'll get into that in a few minutes, but I just thought I'll go through the pictures of the construction first. So this is at Ames. The block walls are going up really well. We expect steel to be complete by middle of next week. They were supposed to be starting last week. There've been a couple of rainouts. There were some other issues, but essentially we are about 15 days behind because of steel right now. But they have the steel in their warehouse, and they said they'll bring it out and they'll knock it out in 3 days. A lot of block walls once again. The elevator shaft. This is the bricked up interior of the gymnasium at Ames. Some of the interior demolition that had begun. This is a mock-up of the masonry wall that'll be at Ames. We have 2 packages here. This is the smaller package that'll be handed over to the Historic Preservation and Village Hall. Moving on to Blythe, we did our early start out there, so they're already setting up the foundations. The foundation pour actually took place yesterday. This is at the main secure entrance at Blythe Park. Interior demolition had just started that morning. One of the teachers at Blythe Park had requested that we protect the butterfly garden. So we have enclosed the area. It's not near our construction site, but we just wanted to make sure it was secure. So we have secured the butterfly garden in its own enclosure. This is the location of the Blythe Park alternate classroom. So we already have foundations in progress for that. So in Blythe, actually, we are ahead of schedule. Moving on to Central. This is the Central elevator shaft masonry. It's already 2.5 stories high. It's making good progress there. This is from the courtyard looking in. You're looking at the masonry wall, and this is the hydromobile from which they actually lay their blocks down. A bigger, larger, expansive view of that. Okay, so that takes us through the pictures of where we are with construction. Now we get to the most interesting part of this evening, at least for me, which is the guaranteed maximum price, the introduction on that subject. So I really, really want you to interrupt me at every stage, because you're going to see lots of numbers in here. So absolutely feel free to interrupt me, because I mean, when I explain this, it's a difficult subject to understand because it's a commitment that you're making on dollars. And you got to understand why we're making this, what's the difference between this as compared to a traditional bid. I'm going to walk you through that entire process. When we chose a construction manager, the advantage that we had was we could go to a guaranteed maximum price that was advantageous to the school district. Let me explain that to you. So GMP stands for guaranteed maximum price. If we had gone a traditional method of documentation that DLA had put together a bid package and we had bid it out to multiple vendors, those vendors would have looked at the drawings. They have not seen the interior of the building because they don't know, they haven't had the experience of opening up the walls. They haven't seen what the soil conditions are. They are basically making a bid based purely on the documentation that was received. So the likelihood of them padding those numbers to capture contingencies would be fairly high. What I mean by that is, if they see $100,000 worth of work come in from their subcontractors, they say, Mr. Mason, you bid us $50,000, but you know what? I think it's going to cost you $25,000 more because this is an existing building. There's renovation in there. When you pull apart the building, you don't know what you're going to encounter. I don't want to change order on that. Or they would exclude it and the school district be required to go back and pay additional monies to the contractor as these hidden conditions were exposed. So there are two conditions that we would have had in case we went with a traditional bid. We would end up with a number that we can't change because we have to go with the lowest responsible bidder by legal definition, number one. And the second part of it is, if they had padded their numbers, there was no way for us to know where they had done the padding because it would have been a lump sum bid. We would have seen 16,500,000 or 17 million. We could have asked them questions on it, but it would have been impossible for us to go and change that number because that's how a lump sum bid works. You have to take it or leave it. You can ask them questions. Do you include it? You can try and find out how valid the number was, but you can't change the number. That's how it would have worked. In the case that when we went with Berglund, they told us what their profit margin is, what their general conditions for their management costs were. They told us what their bond fee was. They told us what their insurance costs were. So we had the foresight to capture a lot of the costs upfront. So let me start with my columns out here. So if you look at, I haven't shared this yet. This will be in your board package coming up, but I just wanted to walk you through this information so that it can be, I can explain the elements in it so it's easier to follow through. Everything is followed in columns, not across the rows, it's in columns. So on the first column that you see, A, let me blow this up if you can't see it.
Yeah, thank you. That's much better.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So in column A, that's the base contract that Berglund bid to us when we approved them in October of 2019. They said that their pre-construction costs were $18,339.60. They said that their general conditions, this is for their superintendents and their project manager, this is what their costs were. And this was their minimal general requirements that they had identified at that time. The board approved this portion of the contract, which you see in light blue on 10/16. So this was our commitment to them at that time, but this was not including construction costs. It was, we were trying to understand what their management costs were. So this is what they told us. And they said that they would charge us 2.75% of the trade packages as profit. So we knew that going into the bid packages. So in the first week of December, we bid out the project and the bids came back in. So you see this column out here in which I call column X. They gave us these numbers after vetting their contractors. It's in white that you see all the numbers that you see coming out here. These were all the numbers that were provided to us. And this was carried through to January 15th. And at that time, if we had entered into a full contract with Berglund, we would have paid them, I mean, I would explain this thing out to you, but they had not opened a single wall out. They had not gone in and started construction. They didn't know what the zoning changes were. They did not know what other additional costs were there. So they had come back to us and said the project was going to be $15,617,754 was the number that they had proposed to us. We did not approve that. If you remember at that meeting in January, we decided to go with selective packages per my recommendation because we were not sure where the zoning was headed to, number one. Number two is we were trying to get our building permits. We had issues with our timeline. So we only did a selective award. But I want to show you the impact of what would have happened if the board had decided to go in and award the full contract to Berglund in January. It would have been $15,617,574 plus this column out here, G, which is the Blythe Park alternate, because that was one of the alternates that we were considering at that time. It would have been $15,617,000 plus the $615,000. And then Berglund would have come back and said, but you had all these changes that were developed since January to us, the zoning changes for $265,000, issued for construction changes. That means after the drawings were bid, the architect has tweaked the drawings based on comments received from the village. So you have an issue for construction set. There was a minor cost increase, but Berglund would have come back and said, you need to pay us $1,285 more. So all I'm trying to say is that you would have had a menu of costs that they would have come back and said, you need to pay more on. They would have come back and said, oh, you want audiovisual changes in one of the classrooms, you need more projector screens. That was not shown on the drawings. It was requested by one of the principals. You need to pay us $5,000. The zoning committee came back and said, oh, we don't like the mechanical unit, the way it is set on top of the roof at Ames. You need to screen it. That's not shown on the drawings. We want $25,000 for that. So the cost of the project, if we had awarded in January without any construction, Berglund would have asked us for an approximate number of $16,755,000. This is where we would have stood with the contract. If the construction had not started, but we had awarded everything in January, our zoning changes had been approved, everything had gone through. So this is what I call the worst case scenario, in the sense that we are not controlling the project. We would have given them $16,755,000 and had no basis of what I call a clawback. What do I mean by clawback? A clawback allows us to say that monies that you have not spent, because remember, Berglund has built contingencies into the price of the sub numbers. If we had awarded them the $16,755,000, there is no way for us to get that money back because we don't know what those numbers are. We can ask them the question. They would have said, we are spending all that money to get this job done by August. And we would have been left with a bill of $16,755,000. So when we proposed to the board that you do not award the entire contract, there was a reason behind it. So on January, I'm going back to now column E out here, this column which says change order 1. If you remember, we awarded Berglund selective contracts like the elevators. We went to the site package. We went with demolition. We called them the early packages that they needed to award, that they needed to start working off so that they could start construction in the ground, start the investigation. So those were the awards. Again, remember, we cannot change the individual values of these contracts because we went with the lowest responsible bidder. So these numbers were directly from the bids. So we have these numbers out here, which is the first set of columns, which we approved on January 15th, including the bond, the builder's risk, the contractor default insurance. We paid for all these elements. We are required to do that. The next month in February, we came back and awarded the rest of the bid packages to them. So again, as I said, these are exactly the line items that you see in there. Okay, so the value of this, you're saying, Ramesh, what's the difference? You just awarded the same elemental packages that you said you didn't want to award in January. You've awarded them to Berglund between January and February. Now I'll show you the difference as to what happens in a guaranteed maximum contract. So as Berglund was proceeding to the contract, they had 3 critical items in their project, which we asked them to reveal these numbers in their bid. We had asked them to show us what is the first number, which you see is this $85,000, which stands for Berglund's overtime on the project. The second one is the subcontractor's overtime, and then the contingency that they were proposing. Notice they had proposed a contingency in the December/January number of $700,000. They have not started the construction. They don't know what they're going to encounter. So they proposed $700,000. They also had overtime allowances of $85,000 and $377,000. We did not award those numbers to them. The reason is I had recommended that you do not award it because let's start the construction. Let's find out the difficulties that we're going to encounter. And sure enough, we've come across certain difficulties, but we've also learned that we do not need to spend as much money. Remember the word clawback that I used. We're going to use that clawback procedure to get back money from Berglund. That's what the guaranteed maximum contract allows us to do. We are going to lock Berglund in to a guaranteed maximum price with the opportunity to say that the monies that were allocated in the overtime, and we have negotiated these numbers with Berglund, they are lower numbers now. So the value of the overtime that Berglund's asking for totally is $373,000. The reason they need that is they need to work Saturdays. As I told you, we are slightly behind on the project. We are working a very tight compressed schedule, and they've lost rain days. They have to, as a guaranteed maximum contract, they have to have their subcontractors work on site on Saturdays as well. So we've reduced that number from almost $460,000 to $373,000. We've taken $90,000 back. That's the first reduction that we've produced on the contract. The second one is look at the number, how contingency has dropped. $702,000 down to $301,000. We have saved $400,000. We have pulled that out of Berglund's contract. In a guaranteed maximum contract, we are going to offer Berglund only $301,000. The reason why they are willing to negotiate this is because they know the difficulty of the project now, since they've been on the site for the last 4 months. They've opened up walls, so they've understood the project a lot better. If every contractor was able to do this, yes, they would have all reduced their prices. But if you had gone with a lump sum bid as of December/January, the contractor would have said, I don't know what's going to happen inside those walls. I don't know what this is built of. I need to have a contingency. But since they've had some insight into the construction, they are willing to drop the price. Now get to this part, which gets really where the district is really going to win out. On the overtime money that's unspent, Berglund does not get to keep it. We are going to write this into the contract that they have to return the unused money. Remember, in the guaranteed maximum contract, that's the maximum that they could spend is the $377,414 on overtime. If they spend $500,000, it's on their dime. But if they spend $250,000, the difference between $250,000 and $373,000 is returned back to the school district.
So it's a win-win for us from that point. The second one, in the case of the contingency, Bergland has to come and ask us if they want how to use that money. Suppose they encounter a truly hidden condition in the project, like what happened today at Blythe Park. They came to us and said that the mechanical contractor, when he was looking to where the tie-ins are going to take place for the pipes, he found that the pipes are not as described. They're underground. There's no way they could have seen it till they dug it open. There's going to be a change order associated with it for them to make that tie-in. It's a different kind of material. It's not used. It's not code compliant. They have to use a slightly different process. They're going to draw monies from that. But guess who gets to approve it? The school district gets to approve it. We are in control of the money. If it was a lump sum bid, we are not in control. In the guaranteed maximum price, we can tell the contractor, yes, all the light green items out here, do what you want. That's your subcontractors. Those are the values that you have. But on the contingency items, you need to ask us how you're going to use it. So we've dropped that number down to about 2.9% of the contract from almost 6.5%. So it's a big win for us. And then again, as I said, the clawback factor. Any money is left in the contingency at the end of the project, we split it 50-50. So it's in Bergland's interest to save as much of it as possible. And it's in our interest to get as much of it back as possible. So once again, we're going to get monies back. The third one, this orange column out here represents all the sub packages. The subcontractors included allowances in their numbers. We know what those allowances are because again, as part of a guaranteed maximum contract, we asked them to show us what those allowances were. It adds up to about 300,000. These are what I call known unknowns. Let me explain what that means. Suppose you're in a renovating a classroom. I'm giving a simple example. You're renovating a classroom, you have a painter. He can bid painting the 4 walls as part of his contract. That's what he's going to bid to get the job. But he's also going to come back and say, you know what, just outside that classroom, when you built those walls, you would have damaged the plaster in the corridor. You're going to come back and ask me to paint it. There's nowhere in the drawing it says that you need to paint that. You're going to ask me to do it. Therefore, I'm going to add additional monies for it. And that is part of what we call a known unknown. And there's monies of that in this contract. Once again, the monies that they don't use of that, they are going to return 100% of it back to the school district. There's no sharing in that with Bergland. Bergland has only a shared saving in the contingency. So think of the 3 buckets. There's a known unknown, which the subcontractors carry. If they don't use that money, again, Bergland has to ask us each month as they use that. We know exactly how much is being spent of that money. Whatever is left in that pot reverts back to the school district. We're getting monies back. From the overtime allowances, anything that's left in the package is returned 100% back to the school district. And thirdly, in the case of the contingency, it's a 50-50 split between the owner and Bergland. That's how we will arrive at a guaranteed maximum price. Remember what I told you at the beginning of the guaranteed maximum price exercise. If we had awarded the project to Bergland in January, our outlay would have been approximately $16,755,000. Right now, after negotiating these values with Bergland, we have dropped it almost $600,000. It's a huge win for us, plus the ability to get even more savings back to us. So I'm saying the minimum savings that we have in the guaranteed maximum contract is $568,000. If there are savings on the contingencies, on the allowances, and the overtime, we get even more monies back. The final number will be determined at the closure of the project because some of these values may, for example, the playground, I have a value, I had put into $143,000 in there. If that number changes to 160, Bergland's going to put 160,000 into this number. So this number will be moving a little bit, but the ability for us to go into a guaranteed maximum contract is a win-win for both the school district and to Bergland. For Bergland, the advantage is they know the total value of the project. They know that this is the amount that, and they can increase their profits by saving on the contingency, but nowhere else can they draw additional monies from. For us, the guaranteed maximum says, Berglund, if you encounter costs in excess of the contingency values that we have indicated in here, you're on your own. It's your cost. So this is the maximum threshold that we would pay out on this job. We wouldn't pay more than this. That's what we arrive at as what I call the guaranteed maximum contract. I mean, I'm giving you as simple and as time constrained breakout as possible, but our savings can range anywhere from 568,000 to a maximum of 1.2 million. How does that happen if there's no overtime expended, which is not true because they've already overspent some overtime. But I want to show you the range of the savings that are possible in the guaranteed maximum contract. And there was a big give and take on this between Berglund. We had to negotiate with the executive committees at Berglund. We finally reached this agreement this morning saying that we had to present something to the board so that we can take this to the full meeting on the 20th of May. But I just wanted to give you a general idea as to how a GMP is arrived at and how the monies are utilized and how the monies are returned to the school district. The advantages of going to a guaranteed maximum contract. I've spoken about this multiple times in previous board meetings, but finally we are getting to one. And I just wanted to present how it's advantageous to us. So feel free to ask me any questions as to how this is valuable, any questions that you have. Sorry, I sounded so long-winded, but I have to get this out of my chest. So.
Yeah.
No, this
Ramesh, it looks you're obviously pretty enthusiastic about it.
Yes, I mean, anytime I save monies, I am excited. And anytime I can pull off $500,000 out of a contract like this, especially when I know that if we had awarded the contract in January, we would have been out 16.7 million. I feel very good about it. And the fact that Berglund, actually the first two, as I said, the allowances for them to agree to give back 100% of the unused monies is very rare. Most contractors will ask for a split. They'll say 30-70, 40-60, 50-50, but Berglund agreed to give back 100% of those two allowances, which I thought was very generous of them. Made me think twice, like, now what are they hiding from us? So we went back. Yeah, we went back and we were digging around. Believe me, we did a lot of digging around. We did a lot of analysis before we came to this conclusion that the number was fair. And the fact that we could reduce the contingency down to $300,000 for this entire contract is incredible, because I do contracts. I mean, at the University of Chicago, for example, they're $50-60 million contracts. In those contracts, I can't negotiate anything less than 5% in a GMP. They just don't budge. They just will not budge because they feel the risk is too high. But here, I feel that since we started the job, we got past a lot of the big hurdles. Getting out of the ground at Ames was huge. That made the numbers a lot more palatable to Berglund. I don't think they would have budged on that 700,000 if we had asked them to do a guaranteed maximum contract in January. They would have said, we don't know what's in there. And sure enough, there were problems. If you recall, there was issues of finding AT&T cables in there. When they excavated, they found poor soil conditions. I mean, they had to eat all those costs. I mean, that's all being negotiated down in this number right now. And I think it's a win-win. That's why I thought it was time to present it to the school board.
Ramesh, this is really good. So at this point, Berglund is very confident in their construction and their progress. That's a lot what this is about as well, correct?
That's correct. That is correct, because they would not take the risk of guaranteeing. And remember, this means they're guaranteeing that the job finishes by the 14th of October.
Not October.
Oh, sorry, August. I'm sorry.
I was about to say.
Of August, pardon me. Yeah.
No, I found this helpful, Ramesh. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
No, this is great news that we can keep up that type of pace and the savings that you've gotten. Thank you.
I agree. Yeah, that's very helpful.
And your excitement.
Yeah, I'm an excitable guy. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I will share the full value of this package going into the 20th board meeting. At that time, we would need to approve GMP so that Berglund can go forward and start to execute.
That's great. And it
Yep.
seems that we're well on our way to doing that with the playgrounds being closer.
Yes. And even if you recall on the zoning changes, we thought this number would be north of 400,000. When the initial numbers came from Berglund, it was about 380. We managed to whittle it down by telling them to take out, because we found double counts between the base contract and this. So we managed to eliminate almost $100,000 by insight, looking into the number.
Thank you for your detail.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. Steve or Ryan, do you want to chime in with any comments that you have on the GMP process? You guys comfortable with what we have done?
I think you covered everything very well.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks so much, Ramesh.
Sure. Let me close my share and return the control back to Don. Don, do I need to do anything to return control?
Is Don still there?
Yeah, he's there.
on mute.
You should be able to like go to my window and make me the host.
Got it.
I believe I can request it. Hold on.
I got it.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We'll work towards getting the playground numbers in the next week and a half and the GMP ready. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks so much, Ramesh.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so next we have items for the Personnel Committee. Is there anything for the Personnel Committee tonight?
Pass.
Pass, okay. Policy Committee, any exciting policies out there, Dave?
No policy committees, though there's just one thing that I might want to bring up. I know Martha, you sent something out today regarding a policy that I know has been on the radar, but given sort of all the pandemic preparedness going on, and I know Pam, you've been thinking about it as well. So if you don't mind to elaborate just a little bit on it, but that might be coming up in about possibly in the June board meeting.
Sure. The Wellness Committee was just asked to review the wellness policy, which we have done, and there's a specific template that Illinois State Board of Education wants us to put the wellness policy in. So the committee, we're required to do that every 3 years, and we finished the process in March. It's been reviewed and documented as far as our wellness policy in this ISBE template. So we will have that's ready for review. You have time.
Oh, so, but we won't have like the 100 or so that we had the other time. So.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah.
What we could do is we could do like a first review of the wellness policy at the May board meeting and then approve it in June. But Pam's been working with our wellness committee and has made some nice required revisions. What had come up today is the State Board of Ed was going to allow us a year to update it because of the pandemic, but because we're close to being done, I think maybe we should move it forward.
Right, you're supposed to review it every 3 years. That just came out last year. That information came out that it should be reviewed, and we typically have been reviewing it, looking at it annually to see if there's any changes. There really haven't been, but they wanted information and more of a 10-page kind of a family user-friendly format as well, which we've done.
Yeah, so that is all that I have for policy.
Okay. All right. So then the next item on the agenda is old business. The first item listed is furniture package as a possible action item. Is there a motion for the Board of Education to approve the Cooney furniture package as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any discussion? Go ahead. Is there any discussion?
On the basis of the fact that the Cooney proposal was the most complete and reasonable, I think that's all we need.
Okay. Are we ready to vote?
Yep.
Yes.
Jim, can you call the roll?
Mr. Barsadi,
Aye.
Ms. Kleiber,
Aye.
Mr. Marhall,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, the next item on the agenda, catch up here, is the Ames Playground bids consideration and potential approval. So I think what we've discussed is we're looking to move forward with the one vendor, which was Imagination this evening. So, I'm sorry?
Did we get any direction on like what exactly we want this wording?
So we talked about that the board would move to recommend the preferred vendor of Imagination to the Berglund Construction Company. So it's not really a formal approval of the bid. It's that the board recommends the preferred to move forward with the preferred vendor to Berglund, to recommend that to Berglund Construction.
Do we want to, can we tack on just like a maximum, cost not to exceed? I can't remember exactly what, because Ramesh has got updated numbers since this was posted. I want to say it was like 172 and change, so maybe
172, yeah, roughly 172 if we're including the zip line in the alternate one.
Yeah. So should it be?
Then I'd like to
go ahead, Joel.
No, then I think I'd like to move forward with recommending to Berglund to start talking to Imagination, and for the playground committee to vet that design with a cost that comes in under about $175,000.
Okay.
What's the dollar amount that you said? I'm actually going to write it here on the motion for us, Dan, to preserve.
I think Joel said 175, under 175.
I said under 175. That gives the committee a little bit of flexibility to adjust the design appropriately to fit the needs of after everyone has seen what is really being proposed.
I guess my only question with putting that dollar amount, because we're talking 172 and change, and then we're talking possibly some tweaks. And I know we were discussing earlier about 200,000. I mean, I don't want to go higher than that, but than 200,000. But I want to make sure there's flexibility to get the design that we want and the layout that we want for the playground. And so I guess I'm looking to Dan and Wesley for your inputs on that.
I don't think it should exceed. So I guess my thought was if we were going to replace the $22,000 of a zip line, it wouldn't be for equipment that cost more than $22,000. I'm not looking to exceed the cost of the exact design specs. Kind of to Jeff's point, this is what we asked for, this is what we got, and now we're kind of going back and saying tweak it a little bit. But I had no intention of going higher than that. So I guess I don't know how much all these different pieces of equipment cost that we could swap out, but kind of taking a skim through the different ones in there, I don't think it would cost more than 175. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't be able to stay within that.
I support what Wesley just said. I mean,
So do I.
There's very much a tendency if we say, okay, the budget's 200,000, that we're a very strong temptation, I think, that it's going to actually reach that number.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
I agree.
I would, if we were sort of thought we had a great design at 172, I think we should try
Stick
to,
with
if we
it.
want to tweak it, we
Yeah.
can tweak it, but I think we should stick to that number.
Yeah.
No,
I
I guess,
agree.
no, right, no, I agree too. I just, like I said, we didn't really come up, I mean, we saw like 172 in the meeting. I just wanted to make sure that that was still a fair number. So
Yeah,
that's,
no, appreciate it. I appreciate that question. I think 175 is fine. I don't want
okay,
to push it any higher either. So
all right, that sounds good.
Force
I'm
us
fine
into
with
Well,
it. Yep.
and let me know if this makes sense. And I don't want to open up a whole can of worms. So if I do, please tell me to shut up. But so whereas Wes is talking about a design tweak, I guess would it make sense at our next meeting to take a look at the 172 design inclusive of the zip line, accessible and non-accessible, full in 172 as compared to the option B as to the playground committee, whatever the tweaks are?
yes.
Would that make sense
Yeah.
to review and pick and choose between those two options?
I'm not quite sure, not sure I totally understand what you're saying. What are the options, Dan? What exactly are you proposing here?
Essentially, the one option to look at next week would be the full in option we're looking at now, option 1, plus the additional zip line for 2 zip lines at 172.
Okay.
And then contrasting that with the tweaks that Wes has from the playground committee.
Okay, but that's sort of still putting a cap of 172. Is that the idea?
175, I think we said, or 172, whatever it would be. Yes.
Yeah, I think maybe to say that slightly differently, essentially approving option 1 with the alternate as our cap and potentially having a second option. And I think what we would come back with is just the final option that would not be in excess of the one we're talking about tonight, but might be slightly lower for final approval with a couple tweaks to it. I don't know if that helps or makes it more.
Yeah, yeah. All right, let's vote.
Okay, well, we need to have a motion first. So,
okay.
Sorry.
So, all right. So is there a motion that the board recommend the preferred vendor Imagination to Berglund Construction Company for the Ames Playground with a built-in cost limit of 175,000?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Jim, please call the roll.
I answered it once there, so Mr. Muirhead,
Aye.
Mr. Barsati,
Hi.
Mr. Marhall,
Aye.
Ms. Murphy,
Aye.
Ms. Clyburn,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Hunt.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, so moving down the list. So I think now, how do we do this here? We don't have the closed session or proposed second closed session listed. Should I read that out after future meeting dates?
Yeah.
Okay, so future meeting dates, May 20th, regular business meeting remotely at 7 p.m. The board will enter into closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary and return to open session at 7. On June 3rd, 2020, we have a committee of the whole. Location is TBD. June 17th, regular business meeting. Location is TBD at 7 p.m. Board will enter into closed session at 6:30 p.m. if necessary and return to open session at 7 p.m. And as I'm, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Sorry, my apologies. We had talked about revising the June to just one June meeting.
Okay.
You know, I feel like so much has changed. So, you know, if the board would prefer to keep the typical structure of the June 3 and June 17th, or we had talked about doing one meeting kind of in the middle of June, but maybe we get through the May 20th meeting and determine what our need is for a June cow or not. We won't have some of our typical end of year student celebrations to be part of, but maybe we agree to make the decision after the May 20th meeting.
I think that's fair.
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like June 3rd to be discussed at the next meeting to see if it is necessary. Okay, at this time, is there a motion to enter into closed session? And I should clarify, we will have no action after this closed session. We are going to enter into closed session for the purpose of discussing the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees, specific individuals who serve as independent contractors, or specific volunteers of the district or legal counsel for the district, including hearing testimony on a complaint lodged against an employee, a specific individual who serves as an independent contractor, or a volunteer of the district, or against legal counsel for the district to determine its validity. However, a meeting to consider an increase in the compensation to a specific employee of the public body that is subject to the Local Government Wage Increase Transparency Act may not be closed and shall be open to the public and posted and held in accordance with this act.
So moved.
Second.
Jim, please call the roll.
Did we lose Jim?
It looks like we lost Jim. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I think I can
You
call
want
the
me to
roll.
randomly read it?
Yeah, do you want to do that, Secretary Wesley?
Technically, the secretary.
All right, board
Yeah, let me-
secretary, please call the roll.
Let me get, so Mr. Hunt,
Aye.
Mr. Miller,
Aye.
Miss Murphy,
Aye.
Miss Kleiber,
Aye.
Mr. Marhol,
Aye.
Mr. Barsati,
Aye.
Mr. Muirhead. Aye. All right.
All right. Sounds like the motion carries.
The motion, yeah, sorry, motion carries.
All right. I believe Jim had set up a second closed session for us, so we will see some of the board members on the other side on that.
All right.
All right.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.